Talladega Superspeedway is the biggest oval in NASCAR. 2.66 miles, 33 degrees of banking, speeds that used to push past 210 miles per hour. Here's the thing though, the speed is not why drivers fear this place. Because the most terrifying thing about Talladega has nothing to do with how fast you're going. It's that you have absolutely zero control over what happens next. Bigger than Daytona. To understand why Talladega is so dangerous, you have to understand the man who built it. Bill France Sr. founded NASCAR. He also built Daytona International Speedway in 1959, a 2.5-mile superspeedway with 31 degrees of banking. At the time, Daytona was the fastest, biggest, most intimidating track in stock car racing. And for most people, that would have been enough. France was not most people. By the mid-1960s, he wanted something bigger, longer, steeper. A track that would make Daytona look like a warm-up lap. He found a 2,000-acre plot of land in rural Alabama, sitting on a decommissioned Air Force base about 40 miles east of Birmingham. Construction started on May 23, 1968, and cost roughly $4 to $5 million. The track opened just over a year later, in September 1969, under the name Alabama International Motor Speedway. It wouldn't be renamed Talladega Superspeedway until 1989. The specifications were deliberately designed to exceed Daytona in every measurable way. The oval was 2.66 miles, a full tenth of a mile longer. The banking in the turns was 33 degrees, 2 degrees steeper. The back stretch alone stretched 4,000 feet. The front stretch curved into a tri-oval shape at 4,300 feet, creating what's essentially a fifth turn right in front of the grandstands. Everything about this track was engineered for one purpose: maximum speed. And the first time drivers showed up to test it, that's exactly what they got. Unofficial lap speeds during testing were shattering anything anyone had ever seen in a stock car. Drivers were approaching 200 miles per hour, nearly 30 miles per hour, faster than what Indy cars were running at the time. There was just one problem. The tires couldn't handle it. The walkout. During practice for the inaugural 1969 Talladega 500, drivers started noticing something terrifying. Their tires were getting destroyed, not worn down over a run. Destroyed, shredded, blown apart. At nearly 200 miles per hour, a tire failure didn't mean a slow lap. It meant a potential death sentence. At the time, NASCAR was in the middle of a tire war between Goodyear and Firestone. Both manufacturers were prioritizing speed over durability, trying to one-up each other, and neither company could produce a tire that held up at Talladega's speeds. Firestone eventually pulled their tires from the event entirely, leaving Goodyear as the sole supplier with a product that drivers did not trust. Richard Petty, president of the Professional Drivers Association, tried to negotiate with France. The drivers proposed postponing the race until a suitable tire compound could be developed. France refused. He had poured everything he had into this track. The sweets weren't even finished yet. He needed the race to happen. France then suggested drivers could just run at slower speeds. The drivers took this as a direct insult. Then, according to Bobby Allison, France confronted him and Leroy Yarbrough and told Allison he was afraid to race. Yarbrough reportedly punched France, knocking him to the ground, and told the nearby drivers to pack up and leave. And they did. Nearly every major Cup Series driver boycotted the inaugural Talladega 500. Richard Petty, David Pearson, Bobby Allison, the biggest names in the sport, walked away. France scrambled to fill the field by pulling in drivers from NASCAR's lower-tier Grand American Series. He even allowed them to bring their smaller, slower cars just to have enough cars on track. Richard Brickhouse, who broke from the PDA under pressure from Chrysler to debut their new Dodge Charger Daytona, won the race. He he was one of only 3 Cup-level drivers who didn't join the boycott. As a consolation to fans, France offered anyone with a ticket-free admission to a future race at Daytona or Talladega. The track survived its opening weekend. Barely. But what was coming next would be far worse. If you're enjoying this deep dive into NASCAR's most dangerous track, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. We break down the stories behind the sport that most people never hear about, and I think you'll really enjoy what's coming next. Cursed ground. What happened at Talladega over the next several years is almost impossible to believe. Local legend says the speedway was built on land that once belonged to the Creek Nation, and that a chief placed a curse on the ground after a broken treaty with the U.S. government. Whether you believe in curses or not, the track's publicity director Jim Hunter actually encouraged the story. General Manager Grant Lynch later admitted the curse narrative was a deliberate marketing tactic to build the track's mystique. But the things that happened there didn't need a marketing spin. In the 1973 Talladega 500, driver Larry Smith, the reigning Rookie of the Year, blew a tire and hit the outside wall on lap 14. It didn't look like much, but Smith suffered fatal head injuries and became the first driver to die at the track. In that exact same race, Hall of Fame driver Bobby Isaac suddenly pulled his car off the track mid-race and quit. When asked why, Isaac said he heard a voice in his head telling him to get out of the car immediately, or something terrible would happen. He never raced full-time again. 2 years later, in 1975, driver Tiny Lund became the second, and, to this day, the only other driver killed at Talladega in a NASCAR-sanctioned race. Between those fatalities, there was an incident in 1974, where the morning before the Winston 500, crews arrived at the garage to find that multiple cars had been sabotaged. Brake lines had been cut. Sand had been poured into gas tanks. No one was ever caught. During the 1975 Winston 500, a Petty Enterprises crew member named Randy Owens was killed in the pits when an air tank exploded. And in 1993, Davey Allison, one of the most talented young drivers in the sport, crashed his helicopter while trying to land in the track's infield and died the following day from brain injuries. Curse or coincidence? Talladega was developing a reputation that went far beyond speed. This was a place where strange, violent, inexplicable things just seemed to happen. 212 miles per hour. By the mid-1980s, Talladega's speed problem was getting worse. Not because the track was deteriorating, because the cars were getting faster. The 1987 NASCAR season produced the highest speeds in the sport's history. At the Daytona 500 that February, Bill Elliott set a pole speed of 210.364 miles per hour. Drivers knew Talladega would be even faster. And when the circuit arrived at Talladega for the spring Winston 500, Elliott proved them right. His qualifying lap averaged 212.809 miles per hour. That record still stands today. It will never be broken. NASCAR made sure of that. The race itself went largely according to script until Bobby Allison was running in 5th place and his engine blew. The failure cut his tires and sent his car spinning at over 200 miles per hour. Allison's car went airborne and slammed into the catch fence along the front stretch. Nearly 100 feet of fencing was ripped apart. 9 other cars were collected in the aftermath. Allison himself walked away, which was miraculous. But 5 fans in the grandstands were injured, with one losing an eye from flying debris. In replays, you can see that Allison's car initially struck the outside wall before hitting the catch fence. That sequence absorbed most of the energy. If his car had hit the fence first, at a different angle, at that speed, there's a very real chance it goes through the fence and into the grandstands. Multiple NASCAR officials and drivers have said on record that if Allison's car had gone into the crowd, the sport might have had to shut down entirely. Not for a week, not for a season, permanently. NASCAR's response was immediate. For the fall 1987 Talladega race, smaller carburetors were mandated to reduce speeds. Elliott's pole speed for that race dropped to under 204 miles per hour, more than an 8 mile per hour reduction. The following season, in 1988, NASCAR introduced restrictor plates, metal plates bolted between the carburetor and the intake manifold that physically limited how much air could reach the engine. The restrictor plate solved one problem. Cars couldn't reach 210 miles per hour anymore, but it created an entirely new one. The Big One restrictor plates reduced horsepower. Less horsepower meant less top speed, but it also meant less difference in speed between cars. When every car is producing roughly the same power, no one can pull away. The entire field bunches together into tight, 3-wide packs, drafting inches apart at 190 miles per hour. This is what created pack racing, and pack racing is what created the Big One. The Big One is the term used for the massive, multi-car pileups that have become almost guaranteed at Talladega. The math is brutal. When 40 cars are running nose to tail, side by side, at nearly 200 miles per hour, a single wobble from a single driver can set off a chain reaction that wipes out half the field in seconds. There is no time to react. There is no room to escape. One mistake becomes 15 wrecked race cars, and the crashes at Talladega haven't been small. In 1993, Rusty Wallace was bumped by Dale Earnhardt on the final lap and went flying through the air, tumbling across the track. That crash directly led to NASCAR mandating roof flaps on stock cars to prevent cars from becoming airborne. In 1996, Ricky Craven's car launched up the banking, went over other cars, and into the catch fence before slamming back onto the track. Craven cracked 2 vertebrae. In the same year, Dale Earnhardt's car slammed headfirst into the wall in a separate incident, flipped upside down, and was hit in the roof by other cars sliding through traffic. He walked to the ambulance with a broken sternum and shoulder blade. In 2009, Carl Edwards was hit by Brad Keselowski on the last lap. His car went airborne, ripped through part of the catch fence, and rained debris into the grandstands. Edwards, somehow, was uninjured. In 2012, Tony Stewart triggered a 25-car pileup and flipped violently over burning wreckage. And in October 2024, the largest crash in Cup Series history happened here. A total of 27 cars were collected in a single pileup with 5 laps remaining in the Yellowwood 500, including 7 championship contenders. It started because of an accordion effect on the backstretch. One bump. 27 cars destroyed. The data tells the story. Before restrictor plates, between the track's opening in 1969 and 1988, there were 4 crashes involving 10 or more cars. After restrictor plates, massive multi-car pileups became almost routine. The restrictor plate traded one kind of danger for another. NASCAR has always argued the trade is worth it. They would rather see 15 cars wadded up at 190 miles per hour than one car going into the fence at 212. And looking at the injury data, they're probably right, but the crashes themselves have only gotten bigger. No fix. Here's the thing about Talladega that most fans don't fully appreciate. NASCAR has spent decades and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to make this track safer. Restrictor plates, safer barriers, roof flaps, the hands device, the next-gen car with its improved crash structures. Every single one of these innovations has saved lives. No driver has died at Talladega in a NASCAR-sanctioned race since 1975. But the fundamental problem hasn't changed. Talladega is 2.66 miles of open throttle. The banking funnels cars together. The draft locks them in packs. And the physics of 40 cars running within inches of each other at 190 miles per hour means that any disruption, any bump, any wobble will cascade into catastrophe. You can slow the cars down. You can make them stronger. You can pad the walls and reinforce the fences, but you cannot change the nature of what happens when that many machines are that close together at that speed. Denny Hamlin put it perfectly. He said, "There is no right way to do Talladega, and no wrong way either. Nobody has it figured out. Nobody can figure it out. There are too many moving parts and too many other drivers with their own agendas." And that's exactly what Bill France Sr. wanted. He built a track that was bigger, faster, and steeper than anything the sport had ever seen. He wanted it to be untouchable. He got his wish, but untouchable turned out to mean uncontrollable. And uncontrollable, in a sport where inches separate triumph from disaster, is exactly why every driver who pulls onto that track knows the same truth. At Talladega, your fate is never entirely in your own hands. It never has been, and it never will be. If you enjoyed this one, I think you'll love this video right here, where I break down another track with a history just as wild. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.